All right. We can get into that big topic now.
Big one?
Hell yeah.
I got a lot to say about that one, man.
Hell yeah, dude. So do I. I actually wrote down notes while I was watching it.
And me too. I had notes on my
Nice.
phone.
Nice. I was about to say, dude, I'm a huge fucking nerd for that. Hell yeah. Yeah, I was just keeping a tab of things that I liked and didn't like. So would you like to kick this one off?
So mine's going to be a lot shorter, obviously.
Okay,
Because
yeah.
I've not seen a lot of... I went back to the cartoon afterwards.
Nice.
This is now my third time attempting to watch One Piece.
Okay.
And I think I went into the live action show with kind of the view of like... Obviously, at first I was just like, oh, I'm curious, right?
Yeah.
I want to see this train wreck. And texted you because I was like 10 minutes into the first episode and I was like, it's like really good quality.
Yeah.
At the very least.
Yeah, the production
Like
is
the
well
production
done.
value is very, very good. Like that opening scene, the execution of Gold Roger, which
Yeah.
isn't a spoiler because
Like-
that's the opening scene of One Piece.
Yeah.
That was really well done.
Yeah, the sets themselves were really well done.
The sets were great, and the crowd, and like if you look in the crowd, you can see younger versions of some of the characters. I thought that was really cool.
Yeah, I loved.
And,
they did a bunch of stuff like that I super
Yeah.
liked.
and like holy shit, this is pretty cool. I like this. And then I was like, okay, so what I'm gonna do is I'm actually gonna watch this because that wasn't my plan at first.
Yeah.
I was like, I'm gonna watch all of this show, and I'm gonna kind of use it as like a jumping off point for the anime.
Okay.
Like I had seen up until kind of like the Sanji and Zeph arc,
Okay.
just like 30 episodes in ish.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah,
never got
yeah.
far in the anime.
Yeah, it's roughly
Anyways.
like roughly 30, yeah.
But I was kind of looking at the episode descriptions and I was like, all right, it looks like this gets up to Arlong Park, which is where everybody says like, oh, the show gets good or whatever.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'm almost at Arlong Park in the anime. I was like, I'm gonna kind of use this as just like, remind me of what's going on because I haven't seen the anime in so long, and then I'll go back and watch the anime after I watch this.
Yeah.
So I kept watching it, and it's hard to compare it to the anime because, like I said, there's a lot of shit that I hadn't seen.
Yeah.
But I liked it. I don't think it was like amazing, but I liked it.
Yeah, that's like where I land on it too, to be honest.
Yeah.
So going into it, my frame of reference was like completely different because I'm caught up with the anime.
You saw it, yeah.
Yeah,
You've seen
yeah,
One Piece.
yeah. I fucking love One Piece. It's my favorite show. So I was like, okay, well, Netflix's track record with live action adaptations of things is quite bad. So
Oh yeah.
I'm gonna adjust my expectations. I'm not gonna go into it thinking like this will be the exact same thing that I really love. It's not gonna be that. It's gonna
Yeah.
be something else. So let me like try to judge this fairly. So like the
Right.
metric that I sort of landed on was like, would this be a good way to get someone into One Piece that's never heard of it?
Yeah, I think I was kind of going off of a similar metric.
Yeah, I was like, okay, if I'm in the headspace of someone that is not familiar with anime or One Piece, and this is my first exposure to it, am I going to be like, ew, this is gross, I don't want to watch it? Or would I be intrigued enough to maybe go watch or read it? Because if it's converting people to watch or read it, then that's a dub as far as I'm concerned. Like, that's a win.
Right. And that's what I was doing. I was seeing if it'll, convince me to get back into it.
Yeah. Yeah, so I
Which it did.
think, yeah, I was going to say, I think overall, I think it probably does that.
Yeah.
Like, I think
I'm currently watching the anime again.
nice. Yeah, I think the live action is okay, which puts it like head and shoulders above every other live action adaptation. Like, this absolute fucking mad lad, Oda, did it again, bro. He does not miss. He made the only good live action anime. He's done it. No one else has done it. Like, that was the X factor as far as I could tell, because this was showing tons of signs of being bad before he was involved.
The trailers did not do it justice.
Yeah. Yeah,
Like, I saw every single trailer, and it was like shit.
Yeah, I didn't like the trailer because it put in that one line that I think Joey summed it up perfectly, is like Luffy just drops one line of like white woman writing.
Yeah, it was like that Marvel writing.
Yeah, exactly. Well, yeah, that's how I described it. And he went, "Oh, you mean white woman writing?" And I was like, "Yeah, yes, that."
Yeah,
Where it's like, "Aha, that just happened." And I was like, "If he is like a
that
sarcastic,
like quippy.
yeah,
Yeah,
a sarcastic smartass, I'm gonna hate this." And he like that was the one time in the whole like show that he talked like that.
yeah.
Um, but yes, yeah. So I thought overall it was pretty good. I like out of maybe 10, I would give it like a 5 or a 6. Where I'm like, it's not amazing, but as far as like, is it watchable? Absolutely.
Yeah, benefit of the doubt, I would give it a 6.
Yeah, yeah. I would say at its best it's a 6, and maybe at lowest it's a 4, but not for very long. Like it's usually around a 5.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah. So I go ahead.
Yeah. No, you go.
Okay.
Say this.
Yeah, I was gonna say I wrote down a bunch of stuff that I thought was like sort of pros and cons.
Yeah.
Because I thought a lot of that stuff was interesting to see, like what changes they made, and if I could sort of deduce why. Because obviously there's only 8 episodes, and they're all roughly an hour on average, and they're trying to get from absolutely 0 to Arlong Park done, like leaving Arlong Park, which is like 40-ish episodes of the anime. So I was like, okay, obviously, a lot of stuff is going to have to get cut because Oda loves to meander. Like, it usually pays off, but he takes his time, so it can often feel like there's not a lot happening. So, like, the example that everyone uses for this is super early on, so it's, like, pretty much spoiler-free. This is, like, the first 15 episodes or something. It's the whole shenanigans with Buggy. The structure of that arc takes so much longer than it needs to, but it's because it has like a specific thing in mind. Like the example that I saw people talking about, and I've tried to limit like other people's opinions that I've been seeing on this. I only saw one brief like person talking about the pacing change, and basically they were saying like, oh yeah, well that arc takes a super long time because like Luffy gets locked in a cage when he's fighting Buggy, and then instead of like one of the Straw Hats just getting him the key and getting him out, Zoro picks up the cage and carries it to the other side of town, where they then find the dog, and I think the dog ate the key. It's been so long since I've seen it, and it's so.
I just watched that one because I just finished the Buggy arc like a few days ago.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, I think the dog like eats the key or whatever, and then they fight that guy with the lion.
The beast tamer, yeah.
Yeah, and the guy on the unicycle. But the whole point of that happening is because if he just broke out of the cage, then you wouldn't get any of the storytelling with the dog and the mare. Because like that's what he was trying to get to, is the thing with the dog. So it's like a super roundabout way of getting here, but that's kind of the point of the show, is like, it's more about the journey than the destination.
Yeah, there are 1,000 episodes in and they still haven't found the fucking treasure.
Yeah, and they're still, exactly.
It's definitely about the journey.
Yeah, it's all about like, oh wow, look at all of the rich personal lives and, lore and backstory that all of these very minor characters have.
Yeah.
So generally I thought like the best the show was actually during the Buggy episodes, because I think they nailed Buggy. I think they really cleaned up a lot of Buggy from the original.
Right. I think that was like I wouldn't say whether that was my favorite part, but like I thought that was good.
Yeah, like
in live action.
Yeah, it's been so long since I've watched the beginning of One Piece, like the show. So like after I watched the live action,
I was one problem with Buggy, and I'll get to that after this.
Yeah, I rewatched episode of East Blue afterwards just to brush up, just to see what a condensed version of East Blue done in the anime style is like. Basically, episode of East Blue was a couple of years ago. They basically reanimated all of the beginning arcs. Essentially the exact same timeline that the live action show was doing. So like nothing to Arlong Park. And they condensed it down into like the length of a movie. I think it's like an hour and 20 minutes.
Oh, okay.
And obviously like they have to rush through a lot of it, but I just wanted to see like, okay, how did the anime do it versus how did the live action do it?
Right.
So that didn't really help me get a grasp on Buggy because they pretty much cut him entirely from Episode of East Blue. Because it's really just about the Straw Hats' backstories, and you don't get any backstory from Buggy at all.
Right.
But from what I can remember, I feel like the live action handled Buggy super well. I really liked his character. I thought he was really like charismatic. Like I just liked scenes that he was in. I feel like he brought up scenes that he was in rather than like making them worse.
Yeah.
And the way they restructure that arc, I think helps move shit along because it's very easy to get bogged down.
Yeah.
So I am a huge fan of what they did there. There were some changes later in the season that I was like not too keen on, but the Buggy stuff, like A+, as far as I'm concerned. Like I think those were great changes because certain amounts of the East Blue did have to get like cut out because there's so much story there that you're just trying to condense into 8 episodes. Like you have 8 hours of screen time, really get to the point, and Buggy doesn't have a whole lot of point.
Right. I liked so with Buggy, right, in the live action, I think you kind of nailed it when you said that he was charismatic.
Yeah.
Like in the anime, he's just kind of insane, which is entertaining up until a certain point, but then like, it gets old.
Yeah.
And
go ahead.
in the live action, he's just like he's more of like a con man type.
Yeah.
And I like that a lot better. I like that character trope a lot better. The one thing that bothered me with Buggy, and the other thing with Buggy that I would really like to note, because I definitely had this in my notes, is my biggest fear going into this series was CGI.
Yes.
I think they used it sparingly. I think the set pieces are amazing. I think they had like the one big CGI monster, the backstory for Luffy.
Yes.
I thought it was okay.
Yeah. I thought the Sea King looked
fine. The only CGI I did not like was sometimes when they show Luffy's powers, it was fine. Sometimes when they show Luffy's powers, it was not fine. It was like really bad.
Yeah, it was hit or miss generally with him.
Yeah. And they did Buggy stuff.
Yeah.
Every single time I was like, this is great.
Yeah, I think they
nailed the special effects for Buggy's powers were great.
Yeah, they really nailed Buggy, I think.
The one thing I would say about Buggy is, like you said, yes, he was charismatic, and I did like that to a point, but just there's one thing I couldn't get past, and maybe other people wouldn't agree, but the whole time I just kept seeing Ledger's Joker.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, it was different enough to get by. I couldn't help but see it every time.
Yeah, I didn't run into that, but that's because like I already have like the sort of preconceived conception of like Buggy in my head as a character.
Yeah,
because like he's a recurring character, right? Like even after they leave the East Blue, they will still cut back to like what's Buggy doing.
Okay.
And I think he's sort of the perfect character for that. Basically, they sort of play him as like. Not to spoil too much, but sort of if you've seen something like Dragon Ball, like I think he's Mr. Satan. I think that's his name in Dragon Ball. Basically, it's this character where like he's not actually good at fighting, but just through like sheer luck and being in the right place at the right time and his sort of con man energy, he just keeps getting promoted over and over and over again, completely undeservedly.
Yeah.
Like, the world is, like, afraid of Buggy for no reason. Just because he just happens to be in, like, the right place at the right time to harvest clout from people.
Right. Oh, that's yeah.
Like, they
definitely.
sort of play him like that. So, it's gonna, like, I think they did play into that a lot. Like, I think they used a lot of his later sort of characterization for him now, which I'm super okay with. So I think, like, that was probably, honestly, my favorite part was seeing Buggy done, like, so well. So much of this, I think, was Oda just going back and seeing, like, if he had done it differently, how would it have worked? Because they apparently worked with him super closely on it.
Right. I was reading something about that, and just like the one note that he kept pushing over and over again with the writers that I think is, really good is they're Netflix writers. The one thing they kept doing is like trying to ship all these characters.
Oh, yeah, of course.
And I read this article that was like Oda kept saying over and over again, like, no, there cannot be romance within the crew.
Yeah, it's not about romance.
Yeah.
Right? It's not really what the story's
story.
about. It's just not that kind of thing. In the same way that, like, I mean, you saw this with the guy that wrote Death Note. Right? He had a very similar thing where he was like, listen, if we really, like, get into the nitty-gritty, like, character drama, it will completely slow down the pacing and the show would suck. Like, keep it very abstract. It's two geniuses fucking with each other. And that's when it's hitting its stride. Not when it's, playing these, like, more intimate character moments. So just, avoid them at all costs. And I think Oda definitely did that because, that's something that he's been very vocal about just generally even before the live action. Like, everyone's like, well, why is it that there's no, like, romance? And he's like, well, because it's just not what this is about. It's about going on an amazing adventure. Like, if the story had to keep getting railroaded by, like, side quests for romancing certain characters, like, then it would just slow down even further. And the only reason he likes to digress is, like, to flesh out the world, and adding romance doesn't really flesh out the world very well because it's just dealing with pre-established characters. But yeah, it seemed like they worked super closely with him, and I think he was sort of vicariously like, okay, well, what happens if I change this arc in this way? So I think that's why a lot of the changes seem to not deviate horribly. Okay. Like, everything still flowed okay. I did notice, you reminded me, saying that, like, oh yeah, Luffy's CGI was hit or miss. I did notice they did rewrite a lot of things to not have to deal with that.
A lot of fight scenes, you mean?
Yeah, a lot of fight scenes were either straight
I noticed that too in the earlier episodes, because I remember watching... I remember up to Usopp very well from the anime from, like, when I watched it years ago.
Yeah.
And when I was watching the live action, that is something I picked up on too. Is like Luffy's not doing a whole lot of fighting. Yeah, he's kind of a bit player, to be honest, in this version of it. Where they're like, yeah, well, it's way easier to have, Zoro and Nami do everything. Because they just, like, swing weapons at people, and we can sell that super easily, no special effects, just, choreograph it. Especially with the Don Krieg fight being completely removed, that was where I really picked up on it. I was like, oh, I'm not... Yeah, what was that guy? Because I don't remember that guy from the anime. So I'm not super against ignoring Don Krieg because he's so, superfluous to the whole plot. In fact, like, he's kind of a meme for how inconsequential he is. Like, he just came in for, like, a second, then he was gone. Like, I don't... Yeah, so in the anime, he was, like, the main villain for that arc, which he's... Honestly, like, I completely understand why they got rid of him. So in the main anime, he's the main villain, and Zoro and his duel with Mihawk is a side thing happening. But that is the far more important thing to happen in that arc. Like, Don Krieg gets beat and is never heard from again, I think ever. Right. Whereas Mihawk is a recurring character. He's one of the warlords. Zoro, it's still his goal to beat him in a fight, even 1,000 episodes later. Like, that is way more important. So I think reshuffling Baratier to focus more on Mihawk is a completely understandable change. Like, Don Krieg didn't really have a whole lot. And plus, Don Krieg was already, like, the reason he was at Baratier is because he was running away from Mihawk, who was fighting him because he was bored. Like, that's the canonical reason that they both end up there is
Don Krieg took a massive armada of an actual entire fleet to the Grand Line, and Mihawk just kills all of them like immediately because he's bored.
Okay.
And then they run away, and he loses pretty much everyone but, his main ship and his couple of underlings. And Mihawk follows him because he's got nothing better to do. Because, he's a warlord and, no job right now. So, just mess around with pirates, I guess. Who cares? And then Zoro's like, oh, it's Mihawk. I gotta duel him because he's, my target. So I thought getting rid of Don Krieg, well, they didn't technically get rid of him because he was there, but Mihawk just killed him in, like, one shot. Which is fine because, like, that's, like, something Mihawk is clearly capable of doing. Like, there's no doubt, like, who wins that fight. Like, you don't need to have them actually fight. But that was what really got me thinking about it. I was like, oh, well, I remember the choreography of Luffy's fight with Don Krieg being really cool. Like, Don Krieg as a character is super lame, but the fight was really cool, and they completely cut it and gave him nothing instead. And then I was thinking about it, and I was like, well, what have we really seen him do? Like, he punched Alvida, and he punched Buggy a couple times.
Yeah.
He punched Kuro. And then he headbutted him. He headbutted Kuro. That's what that was cool.
Yeah, okay, he did. Yeah.
And then nothing in Barate. He fights no one. And then
I remember, the Kuro fight was completely different.
Yeah, I was actually
No, it was like in the anime, it was like this outdoor uphill battle thing. Like, I remember that really clearly.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, they rewrote a lot of Usopp's story. Not his story necessarily, but the way that arc plays out, they changed. And I didn't dislike that one either. I sort of understood why they did it. It did, unfortunately, mean they had to remove one of my favorite jokes from that arc, which is something that I wrote down in my notes. Was like, yeah, they were really hurrying up, so a lot of the, like, funnier moments are just completely gone, which is unfortunate.
I just know that they never, like, brought up the pussyfoot maneuver.
Yeah, he never went pussyfoot
He used
mode.
it, but they never, like...
Yeah, they never described him as pussyfoot mode.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I was like, all right, well, that's fine, I guess. I hated that my favorite joke was removed, though. That actually was not my favorite joke from that arc, though.
What was the joke?
In the original, they're trying to figure out, like, basically Usopp finds out that pirates are going to invade and try to kill everyone in the village. And I believe, from memory, that was actually, like, Kuro was sort of accounting for that. So I think Usopp actually technically had the wrong information. And he was like, oh yeah, they'll be at, like, the beach on the north side of the island or something. So I'm going to go there and, protect it or whatever. And then Luffy, I can't remember if it was Luffy actually went to the correct beach accidentally, or he went to the wrong one and then had to just, like, spend extra time going to the correct one. But basically Luffy hears, oh, North Beach, got it, and then he just starts running towards the beach. And he ends up on the south side of the island. And they're like, how did you do this? He said north. And he was like, oh, well, I ran south because I thought it was north because it was colder. Like, I just ran.
Remember that line.
Yeah, I just ran in the coldest direction because I assumed it was north, and it didn't work out. Like, I love that. That's perfect. Like, unfortunately, we didn't get that. We didn't get Django. Django was.
The hypnotist. Yeah.
Yeah, they dropped an Easter egg of him, but they didn't actually incorporate him. Yeah. So one of the things that I loved was these call forwards that they did. They did a lot of references for people that, like, know stuff further on in the show.
Okay.
So I believe it was in episode 1, they show a wall of bounty posters, and I think you're supposed to see that it's either Alvida or Buggy up on the wall. But all of the visible wanted posters are for characters that will appear later or are supposed to appear later.
Oh, that's cool. Okay.
So I, like, actually paused and rewound and just looked at all of them. And I think it was Django actually had a wanted poster up, but didn't do anything in the show. But they at least were like, yeah, look, Django's around. doing his thing. He's just not in this. And then there was Foxy, which that's a crazy reference. I don't know why they referenced Foxy of all people.
I have no idea who he is.
Yeah, he's post. I think is he post Enies Lobby? No, he's post Skypiea. Yeah, he's post Jaya. And that's like the worst arc of the whole show, and he's the villain of that arc. And he's a complete joke and no one likes him. It's like hands down the worst One Piece arc. It's the villain of that arc who's a clown. Like, even more of a clown than Buggy is. Like, Buggy was, like, likable. So they dropped a reference to Buggy, or to Foxy, which is crazy. And then they also had Bellamy, which I appreciate a good Bellamy reference, I guess. And then there were some other ones that I picked up on that I thought was really cool. So there was one touch that was so easy to miss, but like, I love this. In one of the episodes where they're showing a flashback to Luffy as a kid hanging around Shanks' crew, they're all partying at the bar, and in the background, the song that's playing is Binks's Brew, which is like such a cool reference.
Yeah.
So, okay, very light spoilers. Around, I don't know, let's call it like the late 300s. Let's call it episode 370.
Okay.
They talk to a guy who's a pirate musician. And he is like kind of friendly with them. And he says like, "Oh yeah, no, we're all partying or whatever. I'll play this song for you. It's called Binks's Brew." And in the manga, obviously, he wrote lyrics and no music. But then the anime was like, let's just make that a full song.
Oh, cool.
And the nice part about the song is it kind of is sort of representative of that character that plays it, because the mood is changed very drastically based on just how you sing it. So sometimes it's like an upbeat pirate sea shanty, and other times it's like super sad, and the lyrics are the same either way. It's just how you play it and sing it. And like, he says that. Like, he explicitly says, like, oh yeah, this is like a pirate sea shanty. So it was cool to see, like, oh, all of Shanks' pirates are partying or whatever, and that song is on in the background. I love that. That is such a cool touch.
That is really cool.
I literally did the, like, soy face Wojak when they did that. That was, like, so cool. I was like, oh, no way.
Pog face.
Yeah, I did. I went full, like, oh, fuck. Like, so I thought that was really cool. When they showed the crowd of people for Gold Roger's execution, there were a bunch of recognizable characters in there. They dropped little, like, very small bits of dialogue that very well could have been dubbed over in ADR or whatever, that I still really appreciated, to sort of allude to character relationships that weren't brought up explicitly. So, for instance, like, Mihawk comments on Luffy's hat that it looks familiar. They never said it in the live action show, but Mihawk and Shanks are friends.
Well, they showed him at the end, right?
Yeah, I think so, yeah. Oh, yeah, they showed him with the
wanted at the end.
Yeah, they showed him with the wanted poster. Yeah, that's true. Like, oh, look, your boy.
He's the one who showed Shanks the wanted poster, I think.
Yeah, and that actually is straight from the anime and the manga. Is
cool. Shanks
sees Luffy's wanted poster because Mihawk shows it to him. But it was cool because, like, I think it had already been established that they were friends. I think they said that when Zoro was dueling him. It was sometime around that where basically they had established that, and, possibly a reason for this is they didn't want to tip off that Shanks is way more important than he seems. But Shanks and Mihawk are friends, and Mihawk is the world's greatest swordsman. He has that title, and everyone, like, acknowledges that he's the best. He took the title from Shanks. Like, him and Shanks would duel regularly to a draw, and they were the, like, undisputed world's number 1 and number 2, and it was never clear which one of them was better, and then Shanks loses his arm. And then Mihawk,
the sea serpent, right?
Yeah, and then Mihawk kind of gets it by default. Shanks, like, swears up and down that he's still, like, just as good at fighting, but Mihawk's like, no, you're not, though. So that's why Mihawk
Okay.
has the title of world's greatest swordsman. Is it was him and Shanks were the number 1 and 2.
That's cool.
But I think it would be tipping their hand a little too quickly to immediately tell you that Shanks is like that.
Right.
So there was stuff like that, or I think Buggy had a line or something like that too, which is super cool because I really like that they both reference that they know Shanks. Like that his hat is like super recognizable. I thought that was something super interesting to hone in on.
Yeah.
Because Buggy also knows Shanks. My dog is barking like crazy. I hope I can beat that.
Yeah, I can't even hear it.
Yeah, it's probably fun. Yeah, but in the show, Buggy and Shanks know each other. Like they actually are like super best friends for a while, except they, Buggy hates Shanks now, and they actually do kind of drop a line like that where he sees the straw hat and he's like, "Oh yeah, Shanks, yeah. I mean, he's kind of a backstabber, don't you think?"
Yeah.
And they don't
Really about that a lot.
Yeah, they don't really elaborate
Said
on
like
it.
Shanks fucked me over or something, yeah.
Yeah, he was like, "Yeah, I mean, Shanks really betrayed me like that, but, I'm sure he betrayed you too. I don't know how you got his hat though." So I thought stuff like that was really cool. Although unfortunately there were some where I was like, I don't know that I like that character being removed. Okay. So with Don Krieg being immediately written out, I was completely fine with it. I was like, all right, that's not a super big deal. And the Lion Tamer didn't really do anything, and that's fine. I didn't really, it didn't really live and die by him.
Just a member of Buggy's crew.
Yeah, he's a total fucking jobber on Buggy's crew. Like, Buggy's still relevant, and we still see people that are in his crew, and the Lion Tamer has done nothing since that arc.
Right.
Like, I think even, like, not really a spoiler, because it's not relevant, like, ever, but I think Alvida actually joins Buggy's crew.
Okay.
Which is sort of random, but, like, they end up teaming up.
They showed them together at the end of the season.
Yeah, they kind of dick around in the East Blue for a while, but I think even now, like 1,000 episodes in, she's like a member of his crew or something.
Okay.
Which is like just a strange thing to...
Kind of hinted at it.
Yeah, like they, there might be...
the two of them in like the bar looking at Luffy's wanted poster at the end of this live action season.
Yeah, it might be like... That might be relevant later. I don't know what Oda plans to do with that. Maybe he's like putting that specifically in the show to hint at it. I can't tell. The one that I really hated though was what happened to Hachi? Why is there no Hachi?
Who's Hachi?
Hachi is one of Arlong's crew members.
Okay. And
he's an octopus, and he uses 6-sword style.
Oh, okay.
At least I think it's 6. So I can't remember if he has. I can't remember if his legs count as his 8 arms or not. It's either 8-sword style or 6-sword style, whichever one. And he fights Zoro during that arc in the anime.
That's cool.
And then, they kind of have a back and forth. Like, he's like, "Oh, well, you're fucked because I have 6-sword style." And Zoro's like, "Yeah, it's not. The more swords you have doesn't mean you're better. Like, if I'm way better than you with 3-sword style than you are at 6-sword style, it doesn't matter that you have 6 swords. I'll still body you." And then, interestingly enough, like, out of all of the characters that occur in Arlong Park, Arlong is not the most important. It's actually Hachi. Because Hachi is relevant later.
Oh.
Hachi is hanging around in, like, the very early 500 episode mark. And, like, is actually a huge fucking plot point. Like, it's not like a small thing that he's there. Like, him being on this island at this certain time, around the 500 episode mark, like, arguably alters the course of history.
Okay.
And he's not in the live action show.
You think they'll put him in later?
I don't know. They might, but I think it kind of stomps all over that moment if he's not in it. Basically, he's kind of like a doofus. Like, he's kind of just an idiot that's on Arlong's crew, and he's, like, well-intentioned but kind of manipulated by Arlong.
Okay.
And if you've seen, either the anime or the live action, like, oh, Arlong and his pirates were pretty bad to Nami. They treated her pretty poorly.
Yeah.
And then Hachi like feels really bad about it. And then
Okay.
that ends up being like relevant later because he ends up trying to be like helpful to the Straw Hats later.
Okay.
But he was just not in it. And they also cut out Zoro's friends, which was sort of a random one, but I guess like they didn't really do anything that Usopp couldn't have done.
Yeah, they cut out. I don't know if they cut out. I'm trying to remember. Like, Usopp's backstory was weird in the anime. I know he was like hanging around the kids and shit, right?
Yeah, they cut out Usopp's quote unquote pirate crew.
Right, they're just like the little kids.
Yeah, it was just the kids in the village. They cut them out, which was fine. There was like a little bit of
They were kind of
there was a little bit of character development with Usopp and those kids. Like it's kind of some characterization specifically for Usopp that those kids are there. I watched it during episode of East Blue. They pointed it out, and I sort of appreciate it. Is basically that fight that's happening on the beach with Kuro and the Straw Hats. Kaya goes there, like she leaves her house to go to the beach, and then Kuro's like, "Oh, you idiot! Why would you come here? I'm trying to kill you. So I'll just kill you because I have the pussyfoot maneuver or whatever. Like I'll just, run at you and kill you." And then Usopp's like, "Well, I'm not gonna let you do that." And Kuro's like, "Well, I'll kill you also. But at first, I'm gonna deal with Kaya because she's like the main reason I'm here." And then Usopp is like, "Hey, Usopp pirates, you need to get her to safety." And they're like, "Yeah, we're like super cool pirates though. We don't run." And then Usopp lies to them and is like, no, like it's actually super manly for you guys to retreat here. And they're like, "Yeah, okay, that makes sense." And then they end up leaving, with Kaya, like, "Yo, get her to safety though." And I thought that was sort of a good moment for him because that sort of is what his character is about, is like, he's good-natured, but still a liar, and that's how he sort of contributes, is with his lies.
Okay.
And I liked that, but is it worth putting those kids in there? Probably not. So I thought that was like an okay change. Yosuke and Johnny were not super important. I thought the first scene with Zoro was actually an interesting call forward. Because in the anime they don't show it, but they imply that scene happens. So like
the bar fight, right?
No, before that, when he's at that shrine and then that guy attacks him and he cuts him in actual half.
Oh,
I love that scene because it's not, that is as far as I can tell, a live action exclusive scene. The anime alludes to it. Basically, later down the line, they run into an organization called Baroque Works, and no one knows what they're talking about except Zoro. And Zoro's like, "Yeah, they tried to hire me once when I was a bounty hunter." But that happens like completely off script. Like he says that, but they never show it happening. They're like, "Oh yeah, no, Zoro knows these guys though. And they're bad guys, but Zoro knows them." And you're like, "Oh, okay, I guess, that's not impossible for Zoro to know that if, it's a famous like criminal group of bounty hunters or something, then, it's not unreasonable to assume Zoro would know." But in the live action, they're like, "Well, let's have Zoro's introduction be them trying to hire him," because that never gets shown. And I was like, that's super interesting that they chose to do it that way. I really like that change. Especially because, I was like, damn, they're really foreshadowing this. Like, Baroque Works doesn't show up until, like, they enter the Grand Line. Like, I guess it's a little questionable why a Baroque Works guy would leave the Grand Line to go to the fucking East Blue of all places.
Yeah, it's weird.
Yeah, it's kind of strange, but I overall I do like that scene. And then the only other like super huge thing I wanted to hone in on is they gave Garp and Kobe and Helmeppo infinitely more screen time than they got in the anime.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say too. Is
so much more.
The Marines are just in the show as a whole way more.
Yeah.
They
Yes.
made it more of like a cat and mouse with the Marines, and like I don't remember that at all in the anime.
Yeah, so Garp, they show him a little bit in the anime, but it's not until episode 69 that you really understand that he's special training Kobe and Helmeppo.
Okay.
And it's a complete cutaway. Like, it has nothing to do with what the Straw Hats are doing at that time. It's like, oh yeah, just in case were wondering about Kobe and the fucking blonde guy, they're both working with Garp right now, and he's training them to be total Chads. Cut back later when they're Chads. And that's basically the screen time that they get, and then, they come back into the story, and now they're, like, super sick or whatever. And then Garp...
One note that Oda made about Helmeppo in the live action.
Yeah.
Remember the scene where he's just in his room alone?
Yes.
With the sword, and they show his ass?
Yes, full bare-ass dude Helmeppo. Yes, I do remember that.
Yeah, that was requested by Oda.
Nice. Based.
Show his ass.
Based. Yes. That's sick. I don't know why he wanted that particularly, but I'm not going to doubt his creative genius. Oda's a real one, man. Listen, just give him what he wants, all right? If he wants you to show your ass on Netflix, do it. Yeah, I mean, Helmeppo is supposed to be kind of a joke. At least at first. I mean, even now, he's completely, like, overshadowed by Kobe. Like, him and Kobe hang out, but if anything relevant is happening, it's because Kobe's doing it, not because Helmeppo's doing it. Like, Helmeppo's just there while Kobe's doing stuff.
Okay.
But yeah, Garp, they played the Garp and Luffy are related way sooner than the anime did. Like, that is canon, but they wait until, like, I think after Eni's Lobby to show it, which is like, 300 episodes deep or something. So I thought that was interesting. I did really like that Garp was the one on the execution stand with Roger.
Yeah.
That's a super good touch.
I don't know who Garp is in the anime. It's like I never got that far.
Yeah.
Like I said, I've only seen like 30 fucking episodes. But yeah, I didn't know who that was when I started watching the show.
Yeah, so it's Luffy's grandpa in the live action and in the anime. And he's a vice admiral in the Navy. And the interesting thing is, and I do like that they called this out too, is that, like, he should be significantly higher ranked than vice admiral. Like, he should be fleet admiral at this point. But he's like...
he's caught all those pirates?
Well, because he caught the pirate.
Oh, Gold Roger, yeah.
Garp is the one that quote-unquote, caught Gold Roger. Like, he was basically the counterpart to Gold Roger as far as the Marines were concerned. Like, he was in this cat and mouse chase with Roger, and then he eventually got him, and then he's the reason Roger was executed.
Right.
So, off the back of that, they're like, well, you're this hero of the Marines. You could have any job you wanted. You could be like the admiral. And he's like, yeah, but I don't want that, because then that comes with all this added responsibility, and then, it's a job that I just don't want. Because then they would be way more, there'd be way more scrutiny on me personally. And, that's not something I want. Which is exactly how his character is played in the anime, too. And I thought that was a really nice touch that they just showed that immediately. Because they tell you that, like, I think way later in the anime, like, oh, that he was, the one that captured Roger.
Okay.
So then, yeah, it sort of leaves him in this awkward spot where, like, he's very often not really helping the Marines in that big a way, but he's very famous as, like, the guy that caught Roger, so he's kind of a folk hero. Like, the average citizen of the One Piece world, like, loves Garp because he's this, famous hero. So they can't, like, fire him. But he doesn't want to be promoted, so he's just sort of hovering in this weird, like, do whatever you want because you're a vice admiral spot.
Okay.
So that's why he doesn't accept the promotion. Is like, oh, but if he was like an admiral, then he would have to keep up appearances. But if he's just some vice admiral, like, I think he's the only vice admiral that's noteworthy in like the whole show. Like everyone else of that rank is like jobber status. You know what I mean? Like they're just like, oh yeah, you know, they get one tapped or whatever by, you know, any Straw Hat.
Right.
I did also like the touch that Garp threw the cannonball at Luffy's ship. That's actually a thing that he does.
That's cool.
In the anime, he actually doesn't even shoot at him with cannons. He just orders, like, they bring all the cannonballs on the ship and just place them next to him, and he's just gonna throw all of them. Like, they never even fire cannons, and I was really hoping they didn't change it, and they sort of went for this, like, middle ground thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I like that. So to just hit the bullet points that I noticed from my notes, I would say the Easter eggs were good. The plot changes were mostly innocuous. Like, I didn't really have any big problems with that. A+ to the way they treated Buggy. I love that. Arlong got introduced earlier, and I think that's a good change. Because if you just watch the anime, Arlong kind of comes out of nowhere as a bad guy. Like, all of the buildup you get to Arlong is just the arc with Nami, and that's it. So having him...
I liked Arlong a lot.
Yeah.
In the live action.
Yeah, I think Arlong was good. Garp got introed way earlier, said that. Kobe and Helmeppo were significantly bigger characters. Oh, yeah, and they actually... they changed... I don't know if you could call it changed. They, like, fixed Luffy and Sanji's backstories. So, in the anime actually changed Luffy and Sanji's backstories from the manga. Because they were too, like, gruesome a little bit. So, Luffy's, they never showed him getting that scar on his eye in the original anime.
Right, yeah, I remember that.
They never showed that, but then in episode of East Blue, they went back and did it, and in the manga, that's how he got it, was he was trying to prove how tough he was, and he stabbed himself in the face. Yeah. They never showed that in the original anime run.
Okay.
And then the live action was like, yeah, we're putting that in there, so I like that. And then Sanji had a similar thing, where in the anime, they changed Zeph's story so that he lost his leg saving Sanji from the ship, instead of eating it to not die.
What?
Yeah.
Oh, he did in the anime.
I don't think he did. He lost his leg.
Yeah, that's like the only thing I remember about that arc.
No, he lost his leg in the anime, but I think he lost it saving him from the ship.
Could have sworn he ate it.
I think in the anime, in the original,
I remember that before I saw the live action.
Yeah, I think in the original anime he was like, I think he was swimming. I think they showed a scene where he was swimming down to go save Sanji, and his leg gets caught like in a net or something, and then he cuts it off to like get out of there.
Maybe that's what it was.
Let me see.
Because I remember him eating his leg, like that plot point, before watching the live action show.
Yeah, here you go. I just Googled it. Anime differences. The background on how Zeph lost his leg differs between anime and manga. In the manga, he severed it with a rock and ate it to survive. In the anime, he lost it during the shipwreck in an attempt to save Sanji.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so in the manga, that's exactly how it plays.
What the hell am I thinking of? Because I never read the manga.
It may have been an episode.
Maybe I just heard somebody else talking about it.
Yeah, it may have been an episode of East Blue, or maybe I just told you like that they changed it.
Yeah.
But canonically, he does eat his leg to survive. And in the anime, they don't show it. In the anime, they're like, yeah, he lost it in the shipwreck itself, not saving Sanji, which I think really takes the wind out of Zeph's sails in the anime, to be honest.
Yeah.
So I think I really like that they stayed manga accurate on those ones. I think that's a great like thing to stick to. And then that's like, those are the things that I had as like very significant, like good pros. And then the cons were like, I thought the crew was a little less charismatic overall, but
no, I agree.
I think a lot of that,
one major note on that.
Yeah, I think a lot of that comes down to they got significantly less screen time to just be characters and just, be goofy and shit. So like they
Yeah.
never really play on Zoro getting lost. They just make him an alcoholic, which is like he's usually both in the anime, but like in the live action they like decisively were like, no, he's just an alcoholic, which is fine because that's still in character, but he was a lot less goofy and likable, I would say, although I think he's still one of the more likable ones. They didn't have Hachi, which was not super good.
He was, I feel like Zoro, and I said this to you.
Yeah.
I feel like he was kind of watered down.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel that.
He didn't feel as intimidating.
For sure. Yeah, he was just kind of like sword man that drinks a lot.
Yeah.
That was the thing that I noticed too, was a lot of the character moments where a character is supposed to give like a very cool speech were sort of, they didn't play it as hard as I would have liked. And I noticed it a lot during Zoro's speech when he lost to Mihawk right before he passes out. In the anime, like that was really the thing that like gripped me. Like that was the part where I was like, okay, I think I'm into this. Like I think I really like this show.
What part was it?
It's after he duels Mihawk and he's laying down, like bleeding to death, and Usopp is trying to save him.
Yeah.
And he's yelling to Luffy, and he's like, Luffy, I'm sorry I let you down. I know if you're going to be the king of the pirates, that I have to be the best swordsman in the world. And I just got clapped.
Right.
And I promise you, I will never lose again. And then at the end, he refers to him as the king of the pirates. And I think in the anime, that moment is like amazing. That's like one of my favorite moments. And Zoro has a lot of great moments in the anime, and I think that's like probably his best one. It's either that or the thing in Thriller Bark, if you know, you know. But I feel like it didn't really come off as interesting in the live action, but they still sort of played it that way. Like they didn't rewrite it horribly. I think they just glossed over it a little too quick, considering it's like one of his main character moments.
Right.
Yeah, so I thought generally the crew was a little bit less likable, but they didn't really get very much breathing room because they had to just sort of be hurried along through the plot, so there wasn't really time for them to develop.
Yeah. I will say there's one character that I really did not like in the live action.
Yeah.
I've already told you this, but I don't know who else is with me, but I did not like live action Usopp at all. He was the only one where I was like, I don't know if it's the writing or the actor or like a mix of both, but I just absolutely, I wouldn't say hated, but like he didn't really feel like the same character. I would say.
Yeah, I thought he was
And
okay.
he's the only one that I felt that way with.
He didn't really bother me that badly. I'm not really sure who's my least favorite. Like,
so Nami also didn't feel like the same character at all.
Yeah.
I didn't mind it with her because I still thought she was an interesting character.
Yeah.
Even though she was changed.
Yeah, she was different, but not worse.
Yes,
like,
I think Usopp was.
Yeah, it was just a side grade.
Worse.
Yeah, I didn't dislike Usopp. I think he definitely had the least amount of like love put into his writing for sure. Like they definitely treated him probably the worst.
Yeah.
There were things that I did like about the way they did him though. Like there's a scene. I think it's when Luffy and Arlong are fighting for the first time at the restaurant. And while they're fighting, like, a table goes, like, flying. Like, they knock a table aside or something, and Usopp was hiding under the table, and then he just, like, crawls away to another table. Like,
and they kept the cartoony aspect.
Yeah, I love that. I was like, yes, that is exactly some shit Usopp would do in the anime, A+, chef's kiss. To that moment, because that is exactly the kind of shit he would do. Like, you know what it might be? It might be that usually Usopp and Nami sort of play off each other. And if the way they changed Nami, he didn't really have her to bounce off of. So he was kind of instead trying to bounce off of Luffy, but I think Luffy they sort of changed
they
in
were trying to do
mannerism.
like the fighting over who's the captain shit.
Yeah, they do that in the anime, but it's like played for more of a joke, and it's not really as recurring. Like they only say it a couple times, I feel like, and then move on.
In the live action, it was more so Sanji trying to play off of Nami.
Yeah.
It was like, okay. But...
yeah, I liked the way, honestly, I did actually think the way they handled Sanji, like, flirting with the women was actually a vast improvement to moments in the anime. Because...
I like Sanji in the live action.
Yeah, Sanji was likable in the live action. I feel like Sanji's the most controversial character out of the regular anime cast. Because he has great moments, but then also, like, some of the lowest lows, like, where he's just, like, a complete Flanderization of himself in certain episodes.
Okay.
Where, like, I mean, basically the entire Fishman Island arc, he just spends as this Flanderized version of himself that can't really do anything noteworthy. It's, like, super annoying the whole time he spends, like, basically in a coma because he saw too many baddies.
Okay.
And everyone's like, wow, so all it took was a couple hot women and now Sanji can't fight actual enemies, like, that aren't women. Like, okay, that is kind of not great for his character. And then he gets an arc sort of dedicated to him later, but I feel like he's one of the more overhated characters because of that bit that they always do with him where he's, like, freaking out and simping super hard. And I think they changed it for the live action where he's more just, like, flirting with every woman and getting shot down. Yeah. And I way prefer that, to be honest. Like, that's a way more tolerable gimmick. But I think, like, Usopp's so the joke with Usopp is that he's, like, trying to be a brave warrior of the sea, but then whenever a fight is starting, he immediately uses Nami like as a human shield. Yeah, he always dives behind Nami, like, Nami, protect me. Like, he picks the physically weakest member of the crew. Yes. He always picks the physically weakest member of the crew. Like, even like 1,000 episodes in, she's still the physically weakest one. And he still uses her by choice. Like, he could hide behind Luffy or Zoro or Sanji. Nope. Always Nami. And, like, that's the bit. Is like, it's always Nami and Usopp trying to trick the other one into being, like, antagonizing someone that's way tougher than them. Like, they're both too afraid to fight. So, like, Usopp will, like, make some shit up and be like, oh yeah, no, Nami is totally the one you're supposed to be fighting. And Nami's like, bro, what the fuck? You know, you should actually fight Usopp because he's a way bigger threat. You know, I'm just a girl with a stick and he has, like, a slingshot. And they just go back and forth like that. But I think the way they changed Nami didn't really give Usopp a lot of room to shine on his own. Especially with, you know, the way they were just trying to hurry everything up.
Right.
I thought he was alright, but he definitely had a lot of missed potential for sure. Like, he could have been so much more and he wasn't. I think they really glazed over his backstory as well. Like, his backstory was over and done in, like, 5 minutes. And I think Nami's backstory in the anime is doled out a lot better. Like, I think Usopp and Nami's backstories were sort of not as good in this version, but Luffy's and Sanji's were, like, sort of upgraded. So take your pick, I suppose.
Yeah, Luffy's was, like, beat for beat the same except for the stabbing from...
Yeah, the stabbing was the same, and then they did actually show you the thing with Garp not approving of him being a pirate very early on, which I thought was also a very good thing, because it sort of immediately sets up this juxtaposition where, like, while Garp is technically his grandpa, and he was trying to raise Luffy to be a good Marine, he really views, like, Shanks as his father figure, and Shanks is a pirate, and he wants to be a pirate instead.
Yeah.
So they wasted no time developing that, which I think is good. So I think Luffy and Sanji both got kind of better backstories than the anime, and Usopp and Nami's were a little bit worse. Zoro's honestly about the same. They kind of stepped on
Zoro's,
his speech
yeah.
again in his backstory, but it was fine. What were you saying?
I couldn't remember Zoro's backstory from the
Yeah,
anime before I watched the live action.
yeah. In the anime, they pretty much copied it note for note.
Okay.
He's fighting Koina, who's the girl at the dojo,
Yeah.
and she's incredibly based. So she's like, "Listen, the only reason I'm beating you is because I'm older than you, but you're a boy, and when you're an adult, you'll be so much stronger than me, a woman.
Right.
That there's no chance that I'll ever be the world's best sword fighter." And he's like, "Well, okay, that sounds like a fucking excuse. Mad cause bad. L plus ratio. Let's vow that one of us will be the best, and we'll be like anime rivals or whatever, and fight and try to get each other stronger." And then she dies the next day. The next day she
Yeah.
falls down the stairs and fucking dies. um and they pretty much copied it word for word. His speech was a little less cool because I believe in the anime he was like, he asks the guy teaching him for her sword, and then he
Right.
gives another super fucking awesome speech where he's like, I swear I'll train every day until my name reaches up to heaven. And in like the live action, he's like, yo, I think it would be pretty dope if I was the coolest. Like, okay, all right, a little less punchy, but I think they dedicated enough time that it still landed as it was supposed to. Like, I think they're like, his backstory and then the duel with Mihawk still landed how they were supposed to, although they could have been done a little bit better. And then the only other thing that I didn't really like was I thought Shanks could have been a lot more charismatic. Like, I wasn't a huge fan of
He
Shanks.
kind of had like I don't know. I was trying to put my finger on it the whole time, but like he did remind me of another character.
Okay.
He was very British. A lot of these people were very British, and I felt like that changed their personality
Yeah.
to some degree.
Yeah, dude, I thought it was kind of a curveball that Garp has a Scottish accent for some reason. I thought that was odd
Well,
considering,
yeah,
like,
because isn't Luffy like fucking Hispanic or something?
yeah,
Like,
I think Oda said that if they had real life nationalities, I think he said Luffy would be from like Brazil, and I think the actor they
right.
cast for him, I think is Mexican. I think he's from Mexico.
Okay.
Let me see where he's from. I know he's definitely like Hispanic, but yeah, so it's weird that like, oh, that's kind of a odd combination that like grandpa is full fucking Scottish accent, but his grandson is like Hispanic. Like, it's not impossible. I guess it depends on what they decide to do with Dragon. Maybe, I don't know. Let's see. Yes, he's Mexican.
Okay. And another thing somebody pointed out that I didn't even really think about, I the kid that played Luffy in the flashbacks had no accent whatsoever.
Yeah, that was funny.
He got his accent when he got older.
Yes, he
Like
grew
part of
into his
puberty.
he grew into his Mexican accent for whatever reason. I don't know how that works. Especially because he was hanging around.
Puberty.
Especially because he was hanging around Shanks, who's British.
Right.
That's real weird. That, like, his father figure has a British accent, and his grandfather has a Scottish accent, and then he went like Mexican with it. Like, again, not impossible. Depends what they do with his parents, but like, just, I don't know. Then again, like, I feel like the child actors are always so hit or miss, where it's like you can't really expect the world of them. I feel like the child
Right. And
actors
these ones I thought were pretty fine. I mean,
yeah, they were okay. I thought Nami's child actor was a little like wooden with the delivery.
The scene with uh, I guess spoilers. Uh,
Yeah.
we're doing spoilers.
Yeah, why not?
We've talked a few spoilers already. Yeah, the scene with the mom's execution was
Yeah,
pretty bad.
yeah. Well, the scene that I really was like, oh wow, that kind of just jarred me loose from the show for a moment was when she just like they're eating breakfast or something, and then the child actor in the most like wooden way possible. And I'm not trying to like attack this actual
It's a
child.
kid. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a kid. It's like what do you expect? She's not like a professional actor because
Right.
kid, but they're just like eating breakfast, and she's like, "You're not even my real mom." And like that
Oh
is
yeah, yeah. The
that
mom
is
hits her.
that is a line that Nami says, but in the anime, I think she really sells it a lot better. But then again, it's
Right.
probably an adult woman that was voice acting her, or I don't know,
Well, from what I
maybe a boy. I
remember,
don't know.
like, no, I don't remember a lot of their backstories in anime because it's been so long. But in Luffy's backstory, I remember it's the same voice actor
Yeah,
in the anime.
yeah,
Like, I don't know what they did for Nami or for the other ones, but
yeah. I'm not sure. I'm sure with Zoro they had to change it. I know in the dub they for certain did. There's no way it was Chris Sabat doing Kid Zoro. It's impossible. Um,
yeah, and that's true. I'm also watching the dub, so
yeah. Um,
I don't know what they did for the movies.
yeah, I'm not sure. I thought Shanks didn't quite land for me as a character in the live action version. Like, I really like him in the anime, but
Yeah, he's great in the anime.
something about those early like they sort of picked and chose I think the wrong moments to copy word for word.
Well, okay, so I agree with that, and I think the worst case of that was the sea serpent.
Okay.
So when he stares down the sea serpent, he's like, "Get lost," and it goes away, and it's kind of hinting that he's got some higher power we don't know about yet.
Yeah.
Um, but then in the anime, and this is the same thing. It was like word for word this scene. The anime, he goes like, "Oh," he's crying, and he's like, "Oh, Shanks, your arm, whatever," and he goes, "Oh, it's just an arm." Like just totally straight face, like no emotion. It's just an arm, you know.
Yeah.
That's fine for a cartoon, an anime, or whatever, because like that's where you're kind of more so able to suspend disbelief, you know.
Yeah, and he's
Like
already
this guy's just
yeah.
so cool that he can play it straight when he's trying to calm down this kid
Yeah, especially
after
when like
losing an arm.
this is sort of a culmination of this character who's already a
Yeah.
badass pirate that's world
We've
renowned.
already seen him like keep his cool during bar fights and shit when the mountain bandits came in and he just like didn't fight them or whatever.
Yeah.
Like in the live action, when you see that scene play out in live action and it's the same thing and it's like he's got real blood all over the place and he's like, "Oh, it's just an arm." It doesn't play off as well.
Yeah, they definitely got to play up his sort of eccentric nature to do that. Then again, like he sort of gets a little bit of slack maybe because he didn't lose the arm accidentally. Like so he has the power to scare that Sea King away. Why
Right.
would he let it take his arm?
Oh.
They like he has a reason for this. Like it's not like a plot hole. Like someone later down the line asks him, what happened to your fucking arm, bro? And he was like, "Yeah, don't worry about that. That was on purpose." So it's like it's not that preposterous a line that he's like not super bent out of shape that his arm just got eaten. But I agree, it's kind of jarring to see it in live action where you're like, dude, you should be a little bit more upset about this.
Right. Like you're not a cartoon.
Like, I understand, like, canonically, you're not, like, he's not upset because that was, a sacrifice that he willingly made. But in the live action, it's definitely like, you could have maybe sold it a little bit better.
Yeah.
The thing that I didn't like was when they copied word for word one speech but not the other, and I feel like it should have been reversed. So he has like two great moments in the anime It's where the mountain bandits are fucking with him in the bar and he doesn't fight them.
Yeah.
And he's like, yeah, listen, man, like, I don't care. I clearly could kill all of them, but, why? They spilled some liquor on me. Who cares?
Yeah.
Like, it's not worth killing a bunch of people over. It's such a small deal because I'm just the bigger man in this scenario. I don't care. And Kid Luffy doesn't get that because, he's still a kid. And he doesn't understand, like, oh, wait, they besmirched your honor. You need to kill them. And he's like, no. I'm a world-renowned badass rich pirate. Why would I be killing people over small slights like spilling booze on me? But they copied it like word for word, and it came off a little bit corny in my opinion. But then when they show up to free Luffy from them and they hold him at gunpoint, I would have copied that word for word. And I think they did.
Oh, the line about if you take out a gun, you better use it.
Yeah, he's like, oh, you're holding me at gunpoint. Like, just so you know, you're putting your life on the line here, right? That's not a toy. That's not for threatening people. That's for killing people. If you're pulling a gun on me, you're saying you're prepared to die in this fight, and then Lucky Roo snipes him from nowhere.
Yeah, I remember that.
Like, and that's like one of my favorite Shanks moments, and it's still cool in the live action.
Guns aren't for show, they're for
Yeah,
action.
He's like, yeah, guns aren't for show, they're for action. But I think it's cooler in the anime where he's like, listen, you need to be aware that you're staking your life on this.
Yeah.
Like, not really a thing about guns, but more like the nature of, like, listen, you don't understand who you're dealing with. Like, this is some shit to kill someone over.
Right.
Spilling food and drinks on me, not it. Pointing a gun at me, it's fucking on. But I don't know. I feel like they kind of muddled it a little bit. Like, I would have honestly just switch that and be like, okay, let's change up the exact wording of, if you spill some drinks on me, it's fine, I don't care. Because that came off a little cringy, but overall, I think he's okay. I would have liked a little bit more from him, though. But, I mean, honestly, that's, like, kind of my list of, like, pros and cons.
More minor ones, real minor ones.
Yeah.
Just little positive nitpicks, honestly. If that's, I'm sure there's a word for that.
Yeah.
I mean, we kind of already talked about this, but as somebody who hasn't gotten to this point in the anime, I did like the kind of Helmeppo and Kobe just palling around, I guess.
Yes. Yeah. Helmeppo and Kobe having little moments together was, I think, a good addition.
Yeah, that is somebody who hasn't seen it. And then the other one is just for TV shows in general. This is something that pisses me off so much with so many shows. It's like, they'll have one specific lighting technique, like a filter almost.
Yes.
Make it look like gloomy, a lot of blues, a lot of grays, and like you can tell it's all fake. It's all just from the way they lit it. It's all like this filter, and it's so annoying.
Yeah, it's the color. Yeah, it's the color correction, right? So like,
I noticed that they were doing it early on.
Yeah,
they had kind of like this blue-gray filter going with like the scenes in the Marine base early on.
Yeah,
and I was like, oh god, don't tell me it's one of these shows. Don't tell me they're doing this shit, right? Like it never looks good. It's not funny. It's not creative. It's not whatever. And then as I watched more of the show, I realized what they were doing is like, yes, they are using these color filters that like every show uses now, but they change it and it's consistently used depending on where they are and who they're showing.
Yeah.
So like the naval bases are always these like dingy lighting, this blue and gray and whatever, and like the straw hats are always kind of like this almost yellowish tint. They're outside and they're doing their shit. Like I like that. I thought that was a nice touch.
Yeah. I think that's cool. So like the meme with the color correction is like, I've seen two things. You're gonna have to keep me right with this one because it's like the main criticism I've seen is Breaking Bad does it, where everything is just everything is vaguely.
They kind of like started it, from what I understand.
Yeah, it's like everything is vaguely yellow because it's all like New Mexico desert. Like almost every scene.
The show is not. The show is like no lighting alteration.
Okay.
The joke that everybody makes is, so whenever they want to show, all right, so like the show takes place above the border, right?
Yeah.
When they have a scene in Mexico, south of the border, to let you know that they're in Mexico now, everything's automatically yellow, like yellow filter.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
that's
they're
the
like,
joke that everybody makes
they're
is
like,
like,
what if we just color correct yellow when they go to Mexico? It's like,
when you're in Mexico, yeah.
it's like, is that how it works in real life? Like, if I'm flying from like Texas to
Across the
Mexico,
border,
everything just becomes yellow.
it's
Just,
yellow
oh,
now.
that's how I know I've crossed. Yeah, like, I don't know if it's a big deal in Breaking Bad because I haven't watched all Breaking Bad, but that's like
It's definitely noticeable.
okay. Yeah, I just know that's the meme.
Yeah.
But yeah, I can see there's definitely a time and place for color correction. Like, I think if they're trying to do it to like sort of have a message, like help set the scene better, like
Right.
with the military bases looking sort of like
It's
bleak.
kind of like dingy.
Yeah, like this kind of like it's not the kind of place you would want to be. Versus the Straw Hats are always brightly lit and it's like a fun, upbeat adventure type lighting.
Yeah, yeah.
Like that's sort of the point of the show is like, oh well, the Marines aren't really like in this world of pirates where you can set out and do whatever you want. They choose to be the cops. So the kind of person that makes that decision obviously doesn't care very greatly about their freedom. So they kind of get a lot of flack for that. Yeah, exactly. They get a lot of flack for that in universe. Like Oda kind of has some disdain.
You'll see them use that same lighting in prisons.
Yeah.
Blues and grays and all those
colors. Yeah, where you're like, okay, they're sort of trapped. So like, okay, here's a little bit of like I don't know if I call it a spoiler, but sure, it's a little bit of a spoiler, but the ability that Shanks uses to scare off the Sea King is something that not everyone has. It's like the best way to tell if someone's going to have it is basically it's like the strength of their spirit in terms of like will to power.
Okay.
Except replace power with like either freedom or like conquering things, right? So like if you're a very strong-willed individual with this will to freedom, you probably have it.
Okay.
And because of that, I think there's maybe only one or two Marines in the entire series that have it.
So this is not like a devil fruit thing.
No, this is just
okay.
Yeah, no, this has nothing to do with devil fruits. But a bunch of pirates have it. Only top tier pirates have it, but there's like I don't know, probably 10 to 15 pirates that have it and 2 Marines ever that have it.
Okay.
Because the kind of person that chooses to be a Marine typically is not someone that like has this very strong will to sort of go their own way no matter what.
Right.
So that's like something that I always find interesting is like he's, Oda's kind of saying something with that deliberate choice.
Yeah.
So if they're, playing the color grading or color correction or whatever to support that, then, I think they got to be careful to not overdo it or do it in a distracting way. But
right, and I didn't think it was like too bad.
Yeah.
I think the strongest place they used it by far was the Marine base. And that's, like I said, the earlier episodes had a lot of scenes in the Marine base. That's why I was starting to get worried. I was like, oh, it's going to be one of those shows.
Yeah.
But, I think it makes sense to use it heavily in the Marine base.
Yeah, exactly, because they're trying to set a deliberate tone with the Marine base, especially because a lot of the time they can't, a lot of the time the setting for the Marine base was a little bit lame in comparison to the other ones, like Alvida's pirate ship or the Baratier restaurant, like those, they could clearly make a lot of very, convincing setting decisions with the actual setting itself. Right? Like the legwork was being done by the actual set design, not by the color correction, except with the Marine base. Right. So yeah, I totally see what you're saying. Yeah, for sure. Oh, and I loved one thing I forgot to note was I loved that Arlong name drops Jinbei. That's great. That's a great bit.
Jinbei.
Yeah, they so It's during the scene where he's in the restaurant and they're telling him that racism is over.
Right, I remember that.
So Arlong is eating and, he's getting some weird looks or whatever, and, he's having this discussion. Or no, you know what it was? It wasn't in the restaurant. I'm remembering it wrong. It was right before he sells out Nami to the Marine guy.
Okay.
It was basically when he's telling the Marine guy to go take Nami's money. And he's like...
Oh, the fucking cat ears guy or whatever?
Yes.
Like bear guy?
Yeah, Izumi, I think is his name. It's right when he's talking to Izumi, and he's like, yeah, well, listen, I can't pay you the regular bribe, times are tough or whatever, get fucked, human.
Right.
And then Izumi's like, yeah, well, it's kind of weird for you to call me human like that. I thought racism was over. Even one of the warlords of the sea is a fish man. And he's like, you shut the fuck up about Jinbei. Because you don't know. And that's a call forward to a character who's going to be relevant later. I'm a big Jinbei fan. I'm a Jinbei enjoyer, certifiable.
It's like the big blue one, right?
Yes, he's a big shark man.
Yeah, I've seen him.
I love him. And it was cool to see that because him and Arlong are personally acquainted. But you don't know that until you hear it from Jinbei, not from Arlong. Which is kind of strange that Arlong would not mention that he knows one of the warlords, but one of the warlords would mention that he knows Arlong. Because Arlong is just some rando in the East Blue.
Right.
Especially because Arlong is from the Grand Line. He's from Fishman Island. And Fishman Island is on the Grand Line. It's actually, technically it's not on the Grand Line. It's underneath the Red Line, but, minutia, nitpick, that kind of thing. But yeah, he would have had to leave via the Grand Line to get to the East Blue to, I guess, go beat up on weaklings because he wasn't strong enough to hang in the Grand Line, I suppose. Which is weird because, he was on Fisher Tiger's crew, but, So I thought mentioning Jinbei was cool. I really liked that. And then there was one thing about the scene in the restaurant that I thought was funny that no one understood at all except for me, because it's an inside joke that me and my brother have.
Okay.
So there's a bit that we've been doing. I've been watching it with him, and there's a moment during Fishman Island where Jinbei is in a restaurant and like some fight starts or something. And it became this recurring joke that we have where Jinbei stops the fight or something. I don't remember how the scene plays out, but the thing to remember is in his big tough shark man voice, he's like, I think he said something about oh, this fighting is ruining my meal or something.
Right.
And then that became just a running bit for us. We just think it's hilarious that Jinbei's recurring character gag to us specifically is that no matter what, his meal is always ruined. He's incapable of just enjoying his fucking food. It's impossible. It is not a recurring gag in the show. They say it once and never again, but we just keep making it about that.
Neither one.
Yeah. And then there's a line from Arlong when he's in the restaurant. He picks up a guy by the neck and throws him out of his chair and sits down in his spot and just starts eating his food. And everyone in the restaurant is afraid of him, and they look at him, and he looks up and goes, "What, you've never seen a fishman enjoy a meal before?" And I audibly in real life went, "No, actually, I haven't ever." I literally haven't ever seen that. Please show me that, please.
Complete me.
Yes, I was like, holy shit, how did they know? That's not a meme or anything for One Piece fans. It's just a me and my brother thing. It's oh dude, every time Jinbei is eating something, you're like, oh bro, terrible. He's not enjoying himself. Yeah, that's why he fights, is actually because he's just so miserable in his life, because he's just, every meal he's ever eaten is perpetually ruined. So that was a unintentionally 10 out of 10 moment. I love that moment. I was all on board with it. Yeah, so one more brief thing about the live action. Um, before I watched it, I wrote down what I believe are like the four things that I really wanted them to nail, as like these are
Okay.
sort of the non-negotiables. Like if these are good, then the show's good, and if they're not, then it's not.
Okay.
And it was Zoro versus Mihawk. I think if they nail that duel and that character moment, great. Nami betraying them, Sanji's backstory because it was different in the anime, and the walk to Arlong Park.
Okay.
And I would say Zoro vs. Mihawk was good. Nami's betrayal could have been better, but wasn't bad. Sanji's backstory was an upgrade. But guys, why did we change the walk to Arlong Park? That's peak. Why would we change it?
The walk to Arlong Park.
So in the anime,
I've only seen that in the anime.
yeah. So this is
In
my
live action.
yeah. This is my like thing that I think really stuck out to me the first time I was watching the anime was like this show, the fights are not the high points. It's like the character moments surrounding the fights. The moment that I was like hooked completely, I was like, I gotta see where this shit goes for at least another 100 episodes or so, was during Arlong Park. It's in the anime, it plays out very similar. Nami loses all the money because Arlong betrays her. And then Luffy agrees to help her anyway, even though she already backstabbed him. Because he was like, well, you didn't do it on purpose. Like, you sort of had no choice. And, if you had just told us, like, we would have come and helped you. He puts the hat on her head and then is like, of course I'll help you. Guys, let's go. And then it cuts to Zoro, Sanji, and Usopp. And then they're all like, yeah, of course. And then all four of them slow walk while badass music is playing all the way through the town to Arlong Park. And it just shows them walking and playing this fucking music. And then the townspeople that are rioting are going to Arlong's base. And they get there, and Yosaku and Johnny are waiting outside, and they've had the shit beaten out of them at this point, and they're stopping the angry townsfolk from going in and having a word with Arlong. And they're like, well, just let us in. And they're like, no, you guys don't stand a chance. Like, if the townsfolk go in there, slaughtered for sure. And then I think it's Johnny goes, yeah, but we're waiting on a couple of guys. We know that they're going to be here. You just got to give it a couple minutes. And you can, like, see them approaching from far away, just, like, slow walking up.
Cool.
It's fucking cold. It's awesome. I love it. And they, like, referenced it but didn't copy it. And I was like, if you had to copy anything, shot for shot, word for word, copy that. Like, copy the walk to Arlong Park scene. That's, like, the coolest shit in the East Blue, no doubt. And they did reference it, like, so it still plays out the same, and then they did that picture-in-picture thing where he was like, of course I'll help you, let's go, and then it cut to, all three of them being like, yeah. Like, I think that was shot the same as it was in the anime, but then it just cuts to them, like, there. Like, they walk for a little bit, and then it just cuts to, like, the next day they show up. Because I think the walk-up scene happens at night in the live action. Like, the walk-up scene happens at night in the live action.
The decision to leave happens at night.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Like, the walk-up scene itself happens at night, but then it cuts to, like, the next day, and then they decide to actually go there. And it's like, in the anime, it's just in the middle of the day. She's like, oh my god, all the money's gone. I'm fucked. What do I do? And then they go and do that. All, like, she goes, Luffy, help me. And then they just, no fucking around, zero sidetrack, side quests, digressions. They just walk directly there and start fucking shit up.
Nice.
Yeah, it's great. So I was a little bit disappointed by that, but I mean, the other three I think were fine. So I think a 3 out of 4 is a fair thing to say for, like, things that they had to really nail. So yeah, I mean, that's what I have to say about it. There's been a little bit of interesting shit surrounding it. So like, I think the people at Netflix were happy with it. Like they said it performed significantly better than they thought it would.
Nice.
Interestingly
I know.
enough, yeah. What's
season
up?
two. Season 2 is already on its way.
Yes, I was. Yeah, so I was gonna say, they are taking a page out of Oda's book. Clearly, Oda is rubbing off on them because the writers are already done writing season 2, and they said, yeah, we just need to shoot it. It should be done in 12 to 18 months. Netflix hasn't even asked for a season 2 yet.
That's amazing.
Netflix has not even greenlit, like, yo, guys, yeah, let's get another season of this. And the writers are like, it's already done if you want it. Like, we got to film it, of course, but, give us a year. Like, fuck, nice. Hell yeah. Like, they're already done writing season 2. Meanwhile, like, Cowboy Bebop was canceled within 2 weeks of release. It came out and 2 weeks dead, we don't want anymore. So, I would say it definitely passes the, like, it breaks the bad streak of live action anime adaptations. Because, like, Cowboy Bebop wasn't good, Death Note wasn't good, all these other fucking ones weren't good. But I think the One Piece one did it, and hey, guess what? It turns out if you just do it properly, it works. Who would have guessed? It's weird that, like, all these...
Would have thunk it.
Yeah, who would have thought all of these bad anime adaptations have, like, very similar things in common? Like, the people writing it try to make it about something it's not. They don't consult the guy that fucking wrote it. The casting is terrible. The cast members are, like, picking fights with the fans over stupid shit. Like, Death Note and Cowboy Bebop both had, like, that going on. Like, I don't think they consulted the guy from Death Note for it. I for sure know they didn't talk to the guy who wrote Bebop.
Jesus. I didn't hear anything about Cowboy Bebop. That's the weird thing.
Yeah.
I heard so much shit about Death Note. I just did not hear a word about Cowboy Bebop.
Yeah, Bebop was not great. It got canceled within 2 weeks. And, it was like there was no hype for it because I think the guy that writes it is named... I think his name is Shinichiro Watanabe. They had asked him, like, yo, this, Cowboy Bebop thing about to come out. What do you think? And he's like, I have no idea. They didn't consult me for anything. I can only pray to God that it's good. Like, Jesus. Creator of the show was like, they didn't ask me for shit. I, would have helped them, but they didn't ask. So, your guess is as good as mine, unfortunately, and I fucking wrote it. Like, oh, okay, they're just trying to do their own thing. Cool. Are the casting decisions good for Bebop? No. John Cho's a billion years old. He's way too old to be Spike. And Faye Valentine is picking fights with fans on Twitter for no fucking reason. Oh, awesome. That's super cool. What about Death Note? Oh, yeah, we made it about a relatable underdog fucking virgin loser having a like, romance with the alt smoker chick at his high school. And also there's a Death Note in it, I guess. Plus L's black for some reason. Like, okay, what the fuck does this have to do with Death Note at all? Like, this is your weird Death Note, like, fanfic. Why are we making this into a movie?
Oh, speaking of L being black, the only, like, kind of random necessary diversity change I noticed in One Piece, and it didn't change anything. It was the fucking dude on Shanks' crew.
Yeah,
eating chicken.
I noticed that too. It was Lucky Roo. Yeah, Lucky Roo. They made him black, and I was like, "There's no reason why he shouldn't be."
Right, I was like, "Yeah, you can't keep Netflix that good,
Well, and I thought about it, and I was like, "Well, so like, here's the thing. Like, he said." Like, okay, so the casting of the crew is diverse, but that's because when they asked Oda what nationalities would they be, they stayed faithful to that.
Right.
So, like, they asked Oda, okay, well, this was actually before Netflix was even doing this. Someone just personally wrote to Oda for a Q&A segment what nationality would the Straw Hats be if they were in our world today? And he was like, yeah, Luffy would be Brazilian, Usopp would be from Morocco, Zoro obviously is from Japan. I think Sanji would have been like French, maybe? I think Nami would have been like some flavor of European. So they kept all of that faithful when they cast them. So, no notes there. Like, okay, Usopp's black. Well, I mean, yeah, Oda said if he was in real life, he would have been from Morocco. So, fair enough. Nothing wrong with that. Like, oh, they cast a Mexican guy to be Luffy. Okay, I think the cast for Luffy was actually, a great move. And he said he would be Brazilian. So, I guess I'm not from Brazil, so I'm not going to be super upset about that, Not to sound too racist or anything, but, I didn't notice the difference. He seemed like a good casting decision to me. I saw something about Oda went to go meet with the guy they cast as Luffy, and he like met him and was like, holy shit, you're just him. Like, you're just Luffy. Like, you're just Luffy in real life already. Like, he went and met him and was like, damn, I mean, you are literally exactly this character that I picture in my head. Like, so they nailed it with him. No complaints there. And I think with the nature of the manga, like, I think the only reason that he has to draw a character noticeably darker would be because he wants them to explicitly, like, by author intent be black. So I think then every other character is just white by default. Because it's manga, right? So most of the characters are either black or white. Right. Because it's a black and white medium. It's just white paper with black ink on it. So that's why the characters so often look white, is because he does, like, most manga artists don't really give their characters like noticeable skin shades, and if they do, it's like in brief color spreads or something, or like titles, like covers. So I guess, like, thinking about Lucky Roo, he's not drawn noticeably darker like Usopp's dad is, because Usopp's dad is drawn darker, I think. And they did keep true to that, which was fine. But I guess, like, if we're saying that the East Blue is already a place where pretty much every race is represented, I don't see any reason why Lucky Roo can't be black. Like, it doesn't break the setting or anything. I was like, oh, okay, I guess they just wanted him to be black. Okay, all right, why not? Like, it didn't really add or subtract from his character, so I was like, okay, I mean, that's not really a huge deal.
It's not even really a character.
Yeah, I was like, yeah, I mean, he's just kind of...
the guy with the fucking leg of whatever meat that is.
Yeah, he's just always eating a big piece of meat. That's his character, is he's the fat guy. And I was like, well, I mean, he was represented as the fat guy, for sure. So, they still stuck to him pretty well, so, I wasn't super bothered by that. But I definitely noticed it. It didn't, like, pull me out of it, but I like, made a mental note of it. I was like, oh, okay, interesting. I wonder if they're going to do that with other characters. Where they're like, yeah, well, if we stuck exactly to what Oda says, strictly by statement, then, like, 99% of characters would be white Americans. And then just random characters would just randomly be thrown in, like, flavor. Like, oh, yeah, no, I mean, Zoro obviously is Japanese. It's like, oh, okay. But that's, like, an exception then? Because, all of his side characters are drawn, like, the same. Like, the same skin tone, unless it's supposed to be notably different, like Robin or something. So, yeah, I wasn't super, like, jarred by it, I guess. But yeah, overall, I think kind of a dub. This is why you got to cast your fucking characters properly and, get the guy that wrote the characters. That's why you get the guy that wrote the characters involved in the making of the show. And it just turns out good. Wow, who would have guessed? Like, wow. We get people that actually resemble what the author has in mind for the characters. Don't have them picking fights with people on Twitter. I saw none of that. A+ fellas. Good.
Nice.
I didn't see any of the fucking Straw Hat actors being about people who want them to be good and want the show to be good, which sounds like a very low bar to clear because you can do it by just saying nothing, but I suppose it isn't, right? Like, how many things recently have we seen come out where it's like, oh, it's an adaptation of things that people love, and people go, I hope you guys, nail this, or, oh, this casting choice doesn't look like it's going to turn out well, and then the actors, like, publicly are beefing with fans.